Hey guys, breaking down more baits and techniques, and today I'm going over the Swim Jig. So the Swim Jig is one of the most just fun and awesome lures you can pretty much throw, and what you really want to think about this bait as is a weedless swim bait, a heavy cover swim bait. That's pretty much what it is. You're always going to be imitating bait fish, whether it's shad or bluegill or perch. So it's pretty much a swim bait imitation, but you still have that heavy weed guard so you can fish it through and around pretty much any type of cover. Now going into the cover, where are you going to fish this? You're going to fish this in expansive shallow water cover. If you just have like one piece of wood or one patch of grass, one dock, you're probably better off with something like a Texas rig or a flipping jig that you can flip in there, fish very slowly and efficiently, and just pick it apart. But if you have a lot of laydowns all around the bank, a bunch of docks lined up, expansive vegetation all throughout the shallow water, that's when this bait comes in, because it's weedless just like the jig, but you're fishing it very quickly, very efficiently like a swim bait. So it allows you to fish through expansive cover very, very efficiently and very, very effectively. Now, what time of year are you going to fish a swim jig? For the most part, this is a warm water lure. From that late spring to the early fall period, that's when this bait really, really shines. And the reason is that it's a shallow water bait for one, and during the warm water months of the year, that's when the most bass are going to be in the shallows. And then number two, this bait, like I mentioned, is supposed to be for a kind of expansive, shallow water cover, when there's a lot of cover. And normally, in most bodies of water, the only time there's lots of shallow water cover is when there's grass and vegetation. Things like lily pads, milfoil, matted vegetation. If you have tons of wood or docks lining up the banks, you can fish it a little bit more year-round. You can fish it when there's some colder water, but most bodies of water is going to be kind of the warm summer months, because that's when the most grass and vegetation is around the shallows, and that's when you need that weedless, efficient quality that a swim jig brings. Now, how are you going to retrieve it? How are you going to fish these baits? It's pretty much exactly like a swim bait or a spinner bait or a chatterbait. You're pretty much going to cast it out and just reel it in. Me personally, I like to kind of shake my rod tip every few feet, every here and there, kind of give some pumps and some bounces of the rod tip just to make that bait dart around, jolt, pause, fall, just make it look a little bit more erratic, a little bit more like a natural bait fish, because that is what you're imitating. And bait fish very rarely just swim in a steady straight line. They're always going to be kind of darting, jumping a couple feet here, a couple feet there, pausing. So I like to kind of reel it in and then just give some bounces, some jolts of my rod tip to make that bait dart, jump, make it do something a little bit different to get those reaction strikes. But for the most part, you're going to be fishing it, casting it up into that shallow water cover and just fishing it over top and through some of that vegetation really, really efficiently. Just kind of pick apart as much shallow water vegetation, reeling in, shaking your rod tip, covering as much of that water as you can. Now, when it comes to colors, you're going to keep the colors super, super simple. Pretty much, if you're imitating bluegill and it's clear water, you're going to use some sort of green or brown like this one. This one's like a natural bluegill pattern, but really any type of green pumpkin or brownish color will imitate your bluegill, your perch perfectly. Then if you're imitating bluegill or perch and you're in muddy water or really overcast days when the visibility is low, you're going to use something like a black or a black and blue. It just gives a little bit more contrast. It makes it a little bit easier for the bass to see in the low visibility water. And it looks just like a little bluegill or perch in the muddier, low light conditions. And if you're imitating shad or shiner, you're pretty much going to go with some sort of white, whether it's muddy water or clear water. Some sort of white like this. This has got some gray, some sparkly stuff on top, but pretty much your whites, your silver type of colors. Doesn't need to be too specific, because you're often going to be fishing these baits above the bass as well. It's not like they're inspecting it with a magnifying glass or anything. You're fishing it through some cover up above the bass's head, so they don't even get that great of a look at it. Just try to keep the general shades to match. Shad, your whites, bluegill in clear water, your greens, and then bluegill in muddy water, your blacks. And then when it comes to the trailers to pair this jig up with, you're always going to pair it with a trailer. And pretty much to keep it simple, you have your crawfish trailers like this one and your swim bait trailers like this one. If you're fishing really, really shallow and you're trying to keep that bait, that swim jig up in the water column towards the surface, you go with a crawl like this, because it has two appendages, puts off more vibration, so it lifts it up in the water. And additionally, that flat bottom those crawl baits will additionally kind of have a bit of a parachute effect and just keep it from falling too quickly in the water, and will keep it up near the surface where you want it. But if you're trying to get your swim jig down a little bit, maybe the grass is starting to die off or you're in a bit deeper water, you're going to go with just like a boot tail finesse swim bait. It's got only one swimming appendage, so it has a bit less rise, vibration, resistance, and the slender profile just helps it to fall a little bit deeper in the water. So if you're trying to keep your swim jig down a little bit, go with the swim bait trailer. And then lastly, when it comes to the gear to fish a swim jig on, you're always going to be fishing it on bait casting gear. I generally like a medium heavy action rod, but a lot of guys will go all the way up to a heavy, especially if they're fishing really heavy cover. But the medium heavy has done very well for me. And then the line type is pretty much going to be fluorocarbon. I like 17-pound test. Fluorocarbon if you're fishing around wood or a little bit more sparse open water, and then braided line if you're fishing around thick vegetation. The braided line is much thinner, much stronger, so if you're fishing matted grass, you need the extra power kind of to drag those bass out. Additionally, the braid can cut through some of that vegetation a lot easier. But in the wood, the fluorocarbon is actually a bit more abrasion resistant and it's a little bit more natural looking. The bass can't see it as well. So if you're in the wood or a little more open water, you go with the fluorocarbon. I like 17-pound test. Then if you're around grass, you go with a heavy braid, like a 40 to 50-pound test braid. All right, guys, the swim jig is one of the most awesome and fun techniques you can fish. They're probably my top 3 all-time favorite lures. That's pretty much everything you need to know, at least the basics on how to fish them. So thanks for watching. Feel free to subscribe if you want, and have a good one.